We dropped in and had a cup of coffee not far away on the way here. You've got the run on this afternoon. You've got a split roll. You've got a sort of run off the island.
Oh gosh,
No, that's all right. That's all right. Sorry, I just missed
a ward.
How long have you been Madam Mayor?
Hello, dear.
I think just the last week.
Were you on council before that? Thanks, Have they allowed you to go from primary school straight to being Kingsley, I think you want money for that
That's great. You're looking for your... No, we'll go up and around, I think.
On the rails.
You're on the other side.
No, I just
Can I ask if you'll take us okay?
I think we'll just go to sleep.
I'm sorry, I'm just...
Phượng Bí quay lại nhìn nè tự nhiên.
And when the picture comes out, there'll be a little question mark that says, guess who's got all the money?
Go up and through.
And Rebecca Tackle.
How do you do?
The meeting at 7 a.m. on Tuesday morning.
That's going to be good fun for me. Thank you very much for agreeing the earlier time. Yeah.
Last time
Do we go come to one pub or something?
So 2 o'clock start, and I've got to be...
I'm sitting again.
And I'm Oh, sorry. I'll grab my bottle of water.
Hello, how are you?
It's my husband. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Definitely start. Wait for no one. Well, that's it. And you can't control the tide. You either go or you... Yeah. So if it's 1:45, that'll be fine. You should get across the bridge easy. So Peter.
Sorry, Daniel. Come on. Yep. They won't close.
Ngồi đúng chỗ rồi. Mấy người nào mà resort á, ngồi đúng chỗ.
Bắt đầu.
Sometimes I
bắt đầu vậy chắc là phải đầu dài tới vài phút à.
Đáng lẽ bắt đầu that's what that makes me So you haven't written about the cycles come out
Wow. Oh, yes, so you can just take a quick photo just before you get started.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the National Vietnam War Veterans Museum. We are honored to have you all here today for a very important event. I would like to do some housekeeping now. You are sitting in the Phung Thao room, and please, if you can, please turn your phone off or to silent so that we can listen to the wonderful speeches and stories from our speakers. The toilet is right at the end or in the other way, near the entrance on my right. There are female and male toilets, and also if we don't have enough room inside, there are 3 portable outlet toilets outside. I would like to ask that we do not have food or drink inside the museum. When lunch is ready, some VIPs can stay in the room, and the scouts will bring the food in here for you. Other guests or all of guests, if we want to, we can go out there at the front, and food and drink will be served out there too. I would like to invite our wonderful CEO to come to the stage and have a few words with us. Thank you. We have been speaking English since Nicky Chung became our CEO, so I forgot that I should speak in Vietnamese too. Cảm ơn quý vị đã đến dự cái buổi ngày hôm nay, cái sự kiện rất là quan trọng để kỷ niệm 50 năm tị nạn và di dân của người Việt mình tại Úc. Thì hôm nay đó mình rất cảm ơn vị bảo tàng chiến tranh Việt Nam cho những chiến binh cùng chiến binh Úc. Thì hôm nay mình có mặt tại cái phòng Vũng Tàu, nghe rất là quen thuộc quý vị ha. Thì trong phòng này thì rất mong là quý vị vui lòng nếu mà được để chế độ rung điện thoại mình đừng có để cho nó reo. Rồi mình cũng mong là không có thức ăn và thức uống trong cái phạm vi trưng bày của bảo tàng. Đến giờ ăn trưa đó thì quý vị có thể ra bên ngoài, mình có mấy em bên scout nó sẽ phục vụ các thức uống bên ngoài. Nói về đi toilet đó thì mình bước thẳng ra gần cửa ra vào đó, bên phải của Huy thì có toilet cho nam và nữ. Nếu mà mình không đủ chỗ thì ở bên ngoài gần mấy chiếc máy bay bên ngoài đó thì cũng có 3 cái portable toilet. Thì cảm ơn quý vị nhiều. Thì bây giờ Huy muốn nhường lời lại cho tổng giám đốc của Hội Phụ nữ Viet-Úc, cô Nicky Chung.
Welcome everyone to the National Vietnam Veterans Museum on this incredibly important day, especially for the Vietnamese people that we have here on the beautiful west coast that we're at now. My name is John Methven, and I'm the founder of the museum and a current board member. And I have the pleasure of co-hosting today with the delightful Nicky Chung, who certainly makes me look a little bit out of focus. Nicky is the CEO of the Australian Vietnamese Women's Association, which is an incredible organisation. I won't explain a lot about it now, but the organisation does incredible work. As you came in here, you might have noticed the wonderful gate entrance that we had to come into the museum. We had a large group of scouts camp at the back or at the front of the museum itself overnight, and they constructed all that for us, and I think it might be worth a round of applause. It's a wonderful thing. I'd just like to say one little poem that I think is very applicable to the Vietnamese who went through so much hardship to come here and have watched the growth of their families and so forth. And it's just something that I've had and I feel it's important. From 100 years from now, it won't really matter what my bank account was And it certainly won't matter what sort of car I drove or what house I owned. But the world may be different because I was important in the life of a child. And if you think about the children of the Vietnamese who came in now, I think that is just so applicable. Thank you, Nikki.
Just before I start, I might just ask Eden to pop my slide up, if that's okay. Thank you ever so much. Thank you ever so much, John Methven, OAM. I'd like to express my deepest gratitude to be here on Bunurong land on the beautiful Bass Coast. I express my deepest respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people whose culture, the oldest continuous culture in the world, has been preserved and passed down through generations of storytelling, which is what we hope to do today. Stories of humble beginnings, of courage, of community, from surviving to thriving. It has been 50 years since Vietnamese refugees started to arrive in Australia. We give thanks to the people who have helped us on our journey, starting with Don.
Thank you. My story starts, I guess, right through my life I've been a little bit impulsive. One, my dad died, and being a bit of a rebel, I was 17 at the time, I joined the army. But before I joined the army, I married my sweetheart Krishna down here. And it's 63 years this year, so wow. It certainly shows you her resilience, I can tell. I graduated from the Officer Cadet School, Portsea, in June 1964, after being a digger and a corporal for a while. I went to the Royal Australian Signals Corps, and later I was lucky enough to spend 3 years with the formation of 7 Battalion, including their tour of duty in Vietnam. And during that time I was the Regimental Signals Officer of the battalion during its tour of duty. I spent 13 months in South Vietnam, which included, I was exceptionally lucky, it included spending nearly a month with the South Vietnamese at Dat Do, their armed forces there, and I spent nearly a month in Ap Sui Nay with the Montagnard people, and I learned to respect them enormously during that period of time. After Vietnam I came back, I served for 3 years as an adjutant of a Signals Corps unit. They managed to grab me again. When I resigned my commission, I became very heavily involved in advocacy and welfare work with veterans because I could see what was happening to our vets. I ended up serving 3 terms as the National President of the Vietnam Veterans Association of Australia, and 2 years as the State President of the Veterans Association of Australia. Later on, I founded the museum here, and I still work here with a wonderful bunch of nearly 100 volunteers who are just magnificent people and make this place what it is. I'd like now to ask Nikki just to give her story. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. So during the Vietnam War, my father served as a communications officer alongside American soldiers. Stationed in Bến Tre, he met my mother and they fell madly in love. When the war ended, he realised escape was necessary. With determination, he learned to navigate the waters and organise a small boat for our journey. For 11 days, we were at sea, enduring an attack by Thai pirates before being rescued by a compassionate Thai fishing boat. We were the lucky ones. At the Songkhla refugee camp in Thailand, the US delegation arrived to collect us, but my father was busy helping another Vietnamese boat that was coming in. In May 1979, the Australian delegation arrived and took our family, my mum, my dad, and 4 children, aged 1 to 6, to Australia. I was 2, turning 3. Middle child syndrome. Upon arrival in Australia, we were blessed with the support of an extraordinary Australian lady who we affectionately called Granny. She was a true Good Samaritan, helping us settle into our new life. What an unsung hero she is. Now I have the chance to pay forward the generosity we received. Vietnamese people like myself have been given the opportunity to lead incredibly fulfilling lives in this wonderful country we call home, the best country on earth. In 1983, on the other side of the country, Cam Nguyen, OAM, founder and president of the Australian Vietnamese Women's Association, and founding member, Tan Kham Tran Dang, OAM, currently the Vice President. We're in the process of organising help and support for new refugees arriving in Melbourne.
Today, we're joined by many special guests, including Cam and Kham, which is lovely to have you here, thank you. Many members of the Australian Vietnamese Women's Association Committee and the National Vietnam Veterans Board, with special mention to Kingsley Mundy, AM, who is our chairman. I'd also like to give a very special welcome to someone that I have utmost respect for, our guest of honour, General the Honourable Sir Peter Cosgrove, AC, AK, and I'm sorry, my technical terms, it should go AK, AC, I'm in trouble already, CVO, MC, which is the Military Cross, retired, and also to Lady Lynn Cosgrove. Lovely to have you both here again, and we say thank you.
We also gratefully welcome the Honourable Julian Hill, MP, Federal Member for Bruce, Assistant Minister for Citizenship and Multicultural Affairs. We'll see you over there. Over there, Julian. Dr. Daniel Molino, Federal Member for Fraser and the Chair of the Standing Committee on Economics. Russell Broadbent, Federal Member for Monash. This THRIVE event is supported by the Victorian Government and the Victorian Veterans Council, the Honourable Natalie Suleiman, MP, Minister for Veterans, Small Business and Youth. The Honourable Ingrid Stitt, MP, Minister for Multicultural Affairs, Ageing and Mental Health. Dawn Krunale, State Member for Bass. Wayne Farnham, State Member for Narrabeen. Vivian Nguyen, AM, Chair of the Victorian Multicultural Commission. Cindy McLeish, Member for Eildon, Shadow Minister for Crime Prevention of Family Violence and Women. Ellen Sandell, Member for Melbourne and Leader of the Victorian Greens. Councillor Rochelle Holstead, Mayor of Bass Coast Shire, as well as our Deputy Mayor as well. G'day, Brett Tassari, Rotarian as well. Dr. Kieu Keng Yung, former VC Victoria MP for the South Eastern Metropolitan Area. Huan T. Tran, Commissioner for the Fair Work Commission. Tammy Nguyen, CEO, and Bruce Mildenhall, Chair of the Vietnamese Museum Australia, and I saw Nguyen Nguyen as well arrive earlier too from VCA Vic. So it's such a pleasure to have you all here. Thank you so much for being here. And there are so many other wonderful special guests, and I apologise that I haven't been able to name everybody. Just before we begin, we're actually just going to play a video featuring the wonderful John Methven to share with you the humble beginnings of this wonderful museum. Krishna is John's wife, who we met earlier, and all I can say is well done, Krishna, and you'll know what I'm talking about when you watch the video.
I don't know what she's talking about either. You have to find it out.
Thanks, Eden.
I'm a member of the National Veterans Museum here in Australia, in Phillip Island, in Victoria. The museum started in a very odd way. It's quite a big museum now. We have over 100 wonderful volunteers, and it's run by a board. But we actually started in an odd way. I had a number of bits of memorabilia from my time in Vietnam as an infantry officer, and I really didn't want to hear much about Vietnam after I came home. So I wanted to throw my stuff away, and my wife wouldn't let me. So in the end she said, if you don't want to do something with it. So we decided we'd build a little mobile museum, which you can see in the picture up here. And we started to just take around spots in Victoria, mainly to get hold of veterans, to let them know that there was help for them if they wanted it, because a lot had gone bush. and were really struggling. It turned out that the museum, the little trailer with just an old Series 2 Land Rover and a 2-tonne museum ended up being asked to go around Australia by the Department of Veteran Affairs. And we took this museum around Australia. And one of the things that started to happen was that people started to give us more and more gear. And I felt that we had a responsibility to do something with this equipment that guys were giving. So we decided that we would form a sub-branch of the Vietnam Veterans Association of Australia and formalise the museum. The museum started to grow. We hired a building in San Remo, which is a little seaside fishing village in Victoria, and from that we then continued to grow and couldn't display what we had, so we ended up purchasing land on Phillip Island and built our own museum. With a number of volunteers, we built every part of this museum, and now it's managed by a trust, and it is a magnificent museum with wonderful volunteers.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
I don't know how she got hold of it, but that was a podcast done years ago, but thank you, Nikki. I have the honour right now of introducing our very special guest today. Sir Peter Cosgrove was born into an army family. He graduated from the Royal Military College Duntroon in 1968. He served in Malaysia and Vietnam, where he commanded an infantry platoon. In 1999, he oversaw East Timor's transition to independence as Commander of Interfet. He was promoted to the Chief of the Army and later Chief of the Australian Defence Force. He retired in 2005. What a silly word. He was sworn in as Governor General in 2014 and served until June 2019. And he was appointed a Commander of the Royal Victorian Order in 2019. In 2023, he was commissioned as the Administrator of the Commonwealth Government of Australia. Again, that silly word. In retirement, Sir Peter remains active in defence, health and charitable organisations. He chairs the Rebuild, aiding businesses affected by bushfires and floods, and became the inaugural national patron of the Australian Defence Force Cadets in 2022. Since 2023, he has served as Ambassador to the 50th anniversary of the end of Australia's involvement in the Vietnam War. I'm exceptionally pleased that both he and Lady Lynn have joined us today, and I would like to ask you, Sir Peter, if you'd be grateful enough to, if you're gracious enough to reply.
Well, thank you for that very warm and generous introduction. There's only one falsehood that you spoke there, but you corrected it later when you said I was retired. I'm officially retired, but I don't feel like it in any way. It's a thrill to be here. Through circumstances and personal desire, I'm becoming a more frequent visitor to this place of pilgrimage. And be no doubt that's what it is. Since its inception by the likes of John and all those stalwarts who assisted you in this project of love, you've made this into a special place for visitation, remembrance, and I think a tribute to the people of two nations. Obviously there are our fellow Australians who were there, their descendants, but equally to every person of Vietnamese background who comes from that nation, or perhaps down the track is a casual visitor to Australia, still resident in Vietnam. This place is as part of their history as it is of ours. I'm thrilled to see the official representation here today, so may I say, as a far-off visitor here as patron of the museum, that I'm delighted to see so many parliamentarians, people from local government, people from the public service who have a role in either broader multicultural affairs or indeed in the particular future of the two organisations which have joined together today, being the Museum and the Australian Vietnamese Women's Association. I had the honour, Lynn and I were with those ladies at their operations not long ago, preparing for today. I was blown away by the scope, the power, the reach and the support given by the local community and by government to the Women's Association. It is a credit to its founders. We honour them, and we thank and honour all those who joined them in the creation of the Australian Vietnam Women's Association and its ongoing work, its fabulous work. And of course, while it is spawned by that energetic, great group of Australians who are of Vietnamese extraction, it is spawned by them, but it reaches other people as well with great equity and generosity. I'm delighted here that a fellow who sort of snuck in a bit, Matt Anderson, where are you, Matt? Just wave, there he is. He's the director of the Australian War Memorial, and therefore is presently the boss of that most important national institution, the Australian War Memorial. It is almost a secular shrine, a place of visitation of all Australians and our visitors. You cannot be a foreign head of state and come to Australia and get to Canberra without going to our War Memorial. Many of them go in order to have a moment of reflection and perhaps a little bit of reverence towards our war dead and all those who went to war. Some of them go there because we fought side by side. Some of them go there because we fought each other. Which is to say, there is, I think, one of our endearing characteristics as a nation. And that is, we accept the horror, the brutality, sometimes the inevitability of war, but the moment that's been resolved one way or the other, we seek to repair the relationship, to build the relationship along the lines of, let us embrace each other. This goes back to the Australian experience of, we'll call it modern warfare, when Ataturk, the leader of modern Turkey, who was at Gallipoli, caused there to be raised in the monuments battles that took place on the Gallipoli Peninsula. I paraphrase here, a message which was a reach out to those Anzacs, Australians and New Zealanders and the Brits and the French and all the others who fought against the Turks on that peninsula. And it was along the lines of my brothers and sons who are buried here in this soil. Weep not for your sons, because now, having lived and died on our territory, they are our sons as well. And that sort of that emotion of reaching out, I think we like to see as a characteristic of the Australian character. So it is so appropriate that these two wonderful organisations, this place of pilgrimage for so many veterans, is an historical grace note for our modern Australian conduct of international relations. The association, on the other hand, is a place of industry and inspiration and a perspective of the future to make the future better for the people who access the services and the camaraderie and the love that is exhibited at that place. I spoke about the pilgrimage nature of how this place occurred, the travelling show that became a place in need of a home, and how it was found here, and how it was started by the genius of men who were no longer in their salad years, but said, we're going to create this for the future. And together with governments and volunteers and private money and hard work and local communities, it has become, in the shadow of the Australian War Memorial, a partner. And the Australian War Memorial, I know, because I used to be the chairman of the War Memorial, welcomes this sort of satellite operation under no sense of control, but just acknowledging that Australians need their places of history. And we've set them up all over the world. In Europe, in the Middle East, around the Pacific, and of course in Vietnam, with the collaboration over time, we can be remembered in that place, which is more of the modern times when perhaps the hard feelings may still resonate in some parts, but I think it points towards the characteristic that I spoke of a few minutes ago, that we seek to be friends with everyone we can. I was the first Australian general to visit Vietnam who'd actually fought there as a young infantry officer. So obviously thousands of Australians had gone there of their own volition. I went there on official duty, but it was tremendous to see that we were attempting to rebuild that relationship, and that goes on today. As Governor General, I made a vice-regal visit there, therefore as our de facto head of state, and was received warmly again. I would like now to say that I thank all those who facilitated today's getting together, choosing this place. So I have vast admiration for all of the people that you are counted, all the people that you've assembled today, and your genius in founding the organisation. I think perhaps Nguyen is the most common of the Vietnamese names, because I've had about 4 or 5 officers working for me, all by the same name. I think it's the Smith, isn't it? It's the Smith of Jones, right? How many Smiths here? Any Smiths? Hands up. Well, be a Smith if you like. So I'd like to, what you've done is wonderful, and we're celebrating that today. What the governments and the communities have done in supporting you is marvellous, but typically Australian. What the veterans have done in this place is to make a sort of a holy place of it. You couldn't have chosen a better place, and I'm proud to be associated with both groups. Good luck with the day.
Sorry that hasn't been on the whole time actually. We've actually got live AI subtitles for our Vietnamese folks that are screened here and here as well. Thank you ever so much, Sir Peter Cosgrove, for that lovely speech. You've said so many wonderful things, but I'm going to pick out one little thing actually. The visit of yourself and Lady Cosgrove to our Springvale facility. Until recently, that has absolutely been the highlight of my career, to sit with you both and enjoy bubble tea together. That was spot on. Thank you ever so much. I have the privilege of welcoming Honourable Julian Hill MP, Assistant Minister for Citizenship and Multicultural Affairs, Federal Member for Bruce since 2016. I read that you were the youngest mayor at Port Phillip City between 2000 and 2002. It's a great pleasure to have you here.
you look how long ago that was, I was obviously 12 when I was. It is really wonderful to be here on behalf of the Australian Government, and I saw a few folks here in Sydney last night at the most glorious reception that the Prime Minister hosted to formally mark 50 years of the contribution of Vietnamese Australians to our country. We had a representative group of community leaders and people from right around every state and territory. It was a beautiful reception at Kirribilli House, and it was on Sydney Harbour, and the weather was perfect last night. And I don't know whether I should say this in front of the former Governor-General, but he was so excited that after an hour he busted us through the gate into Admiralty House, the Governor-General's residence, because she was away. And we took a magical photo which is now circulating on social media. You couldn't have scripted it more perfectly with the Harbour Bridge and the Opera House behind us. And it's a view I'm sure Sir Peter and Lady Cosgrove would remember well. But the Prime Minister spoke so warmly and genuinely of his love of Vietnamese Australians, including his community in Marrickville, and talked about school photos coming home of his own son and the whole class dressed up in Vietnamese traditional dress as part of the culture. And it's a love that I share as a Melburnian, someone who's always lived in Melbourne. I could not imagine our home state of Victoria, my home state, without the contribution of Vietnamese Australians, and certainly in my electorate in southeast Melbourne. Indeed, for 50 years, which I'm sorry to say I'm on slightly the wrong side of 50, for all of my conscious memories living in Melbourne, Vietnamese culture has been part of our life. So, marking this milestone in modern multicultural Australia, I also acknowledge that our continent is vast and ancient and has always been a multicultural place. First Nations Australians spoke more than 250 different languages and practiced numerous different cultural traditions themselves, and I acknowledge that we're here today on the traditional lands of the Bunurong people. I also acknowledge parliamentary colleagues. Dr. Daniel Molino was with us last night in Sydney, to Russell Broadbent, where are you, Russell? You were here a second ago. Russell Broadbent and Jordan Craignalle, the federal and state members. Russell's an old friend. It's good to be in your patch, and to our two state ministerial colleagues and other representatives. But most importantly today, to all of the many community leaders and members from the Vietnamese Australian community, including Nikki, the CEO extraordinaire, and to the veterans who served in the ADF, especially those who served in the Vietnam War. Thank you for your service and for the sacrifices that you made, and in particular also to the families that supported you through that. It's a debt that others, not from military families, I don't think can ever fully understand, and certainly something that the nation can never truly repay. Thank you, and I think I couldn't add to anything that you've said, Sir Peter, to the work of the National Vietnam Veterans Museum for providing this place of recognition and remembrance, and for keeping the story of Australia's military history alive and making it accessible to all Australians. Before I was appointed to this role, I was actually chair of the Defence Committee, and some of the funnest times you have is wandering around and finding all the little military museums away and incredible stories around the country. But it is a fitting venue for today's celebrations. I use the word celebration though deliberately and thoughtfully. It's not lost on everyone here that this is also, the next couple of months, a difficult time for many Vietnam veterans, Vietnamese Australians and those who served, as we approach the anniversary at the end of April of the end of the Vietnam War and the fall of Saigon. With the passage of time, we've created new lives and memories. And our relationship with modern Vietnam today is transformed. It's no longer defined by war, it's defined by comprehensive strategic partnership and cooperation in many spheres of our national endeavour. But memories of the conflict run deep. The anniversary carries with it loss, sadness and melancholy for many, of comrades fallen, of a homeland and lives left behind or lost, of journeys made across the sea, and of some who helped us left behind. But 50 years on is also a time to celebrate the remarkable contributions of Vietnamese Australians to our nation. An entrepreneurial spirit, a cultural legacy, an enduring influence that contributes in every way to our national life. Thrive 2025 is apt because the Vietnamese Australian community is thriving. More than 330,000 Australians today identify with Vietnamese ancestry, including more than a third of those living in our home state of Victoria. So many people arrived, though, as our nation opened the door in that remarkable feat of generosity, offering safe haven and the possibility of not just a better life, but of life itself in security, freedom and dignity. And it's a possibility that people seized and made the most of for everyone's benefit. Vietnamese Australians have added such significant chapters to the story of our nation. They're chapters written with courage and energy, with resourcefulness and determination, and with the unparalleled power of aspiration. Contributing to every part of our economy and society, that willingness and determination to have a crack, to start a business and to give the kids a better life through the power of education and incredible hard work. I'm seeing TNQ, I've joked before that when you left the upper house of Victoria, no disrespect to our upper house colleagues, the average IQ dropped, only slightly, because we do like these two. But this bloke was literally an internationally recognised maths professor. I was at an event in Canberra a few weeks ago. Actually, I could say that about you too, Dr. Molina. You were both in the upper house in Victoria. But life goes on, doesn't it? I've got to go and sit next to my upper house colleague here in a moment. I was at an event in Canberra a few weeks ago with the remarkable Hugh Trong, who arrived as a refugee on a boat as a very young child in 1978. Now, Hugh, for those who don't know him, forged a career in investment and business. Made a lot of money, understand, as an entrepreneur. But he now devotes his energy to his social enterprise, Thrive, also called Thrive, which exists to boost refugee employment and economic participation, to help people start businesses as quickly as possible. And at the event, he showed a photo of the boat he came on. It's just magical that he managed to get this photo through treacherous waters. And there was a dozen or so small children neatly lined up in 2 rows. Hugh went through them one by one and pointed out what they'd gone on to do in our nation. A doctor, a surgeon, a barrister, King's Counsel, banker, businessman, engineer, nurse, teacher, social workers, and every manner of contribution. Nikki, the thing that I particularly loved about your story was your mention, I think, was of Gran or Granny?
Granny.
Yeah, it was one of the things I was really proud of last week, to announce that, back to the future, good things come back again. That the government has made permanent now the Community Refugee Integration Sponsorship Program, the CRIS program. We should never have got rid of that as part of our refugee settlement, frankly, where everyday Australians can volunteer to play that role to mentor and help people settle in. It's a great program. Also proud that actually the last 2 years we've delivered the largest humanitarian program since that act of generosity under the Fraser government in 1982, with more displaced people in the world than at any time since World War II. But thank you to everyone here for what you've done and will continue to do to build our nation. Before I close, just a special shout out to our co-hosts. I think, Peter, you've well reflected on the museum. Let me also reflect on the Australian Vietnamese Women's Association, going strong for more than 40 years. Every day, the association's now 380 plus workers.
425.
425, that's the official figure. It's actually incredible. I mean, it sounds like a little community organisation, but don't be fooled. 425 workers out there in the community making a positive difference to people's lives in aged care, disability care, playgroups, vocational, counselling services and more. I was pretty excited a few years ago when you finally left the west of Melbourne and set up shop in Springvale as well. But they help people, it doesn't matter about the age, their gender, their ethnicity, their faith. The promise of Australian multiculturalism to me is that great Australian promise of a fair go. That everyone gets a fair crack at life in our country, no matter their background, their identity, their faith, their religion, and you certainly help us live up to that promise every day. Their dynamic CEO, Nikki, though, is even more remarkable for somehow, it's a real feat, having managed to fill the very, very, very big shoes, Cam UNOAM, that you left behind as the founder and CEO for decades. So look, in closing, as many will be aware, the theme of Thrive is service, sacrifice and success, and those words are a good note to end on. Thank you to everyone here for your service to our country, whatever form that's taken in, community members and veterans alike. I acknowledge again the sacrifices that you and your parents made, to come here and support you and the sacrifices of our service personnel and their families. And I wish you all unlimited success as you continue to build our communities and our nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julian Hill MP. Thank you for your thoughts and presentation. It was wonderful. We're very grateful for the support of the Victorian Veterans Council and the Victorian State Government for today's event. I have no intention of being involved in politics, but I must say that the support the Vietnam veterans have had in Victoria here has been wonderful. Well, why? But our state president of the Vietnam Veterans Association in Australia, Bob Elworthy, has a very good rapport with them, and he has nothing but praise for what we get for it. But they have both the council and the Victorian State Government have contributed for this event, and we're very grateful for your support. I'd like to welcome two hard-working ministers for 3 huge portfolios each. The Honourable Natalie Solomon MP, Minister for Veterans, Small Business and Youth. If you would like to come up, please. And also the Honourable Ingrid Stick, thank you, MP, Minister for Multicultural Affairs, Ageing and Mental Health. And we welcome you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that, those comments, John. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that we are meeting here today. I do want to also acknowledge any current and ex-service members, any veterans of our Defence Force who are also here today, and thank you for your service and sacrifice for our country. I'd like to again acknowledge the Honourable Sir Peter Gosgrove. Thank you so much for being here and those wonderful words, the words of Atatürk. I think it's so important to the meaning and the message that Atatürk had sent to the mothers of our Johnnies was one that really resonates today, of friendship, of peace, of working together, and really, you know, in the year of the Gallipoli 110th anniversary, it really does reflect so importantly to us all. Of course, I'd like to acknowledge the wonderful local champion and my very good friend, the member for Bass, Jordan Cronelli MP. Thank you so much for having us here today. Both federal and state, many colleagues that are here. It just shows you how important this event is. Of course, to the Australian Vietnamese Women's Association, again for hosting this important event, and in particular Cam Nguyen OAM, the founder and president. Of course, Nikki, thank you for sharing that story, the story that many resonate and reflect on, in particular in our Vietnamese community. Also, I've seen the members from VMA, VCA, and of course the Vietnam Veterans Association, and a big shout out to our Glenroy Vietnamese Scouts that are here, the next generation of Australian for that wonderful welcome. And of course, this sacred place, the Vietnam Veterans Museum. Now, between John and Kingsley, and of course my very good friend Bob, as you know, this place is one that we have committed as the Victorian Government 10 million for the next phase, which is a brand new museum. Thank you. between the three of them, let me tell you, of course you're going to get the best outcome from the Victorian government, because there could better be such strong advocates for the Vietnam veterans and of course this place. So I do want to thank all the volunteers and everybody here, the team at the Vietnam Veterans. Everybody plays their part, and it's wonderful that you continue to support this very important and sacred place that we are here today. And many other members of community groups, associations, friends, it is fantastic to be here to honour and acknowledge and celebrate the Victorian Vietnamese community have contributed to Victoria for over 50 years, and to commemorate the service and sacrifice of course, our veterans who have served in the Vietnam War. And as I said, what better place to be here than here at the Vietnam Veterans Museum. And as I said, where we have committed $10 million for a brand new museum, and I can't wait to see the next phase. The theme of this event is Thrive, and as others have noted, this is a great description for the story of the many, many stories of the Vietnamese community in Victoria over the past 5 decades. Importantly, 2025 marks the 50th anniversary, the fall of Saigon, which saw the North Vietnam capture the capital of South Vietnam, Saigon, on the 30th of April of 1975. This ultimately led to the end of the Vietnam War and the evacuation of thousands of Vietnamese all across the world. And here in Victoria, we were able to see the beginning of an important chapter of a vibrant multicultural state that we are so proud of here today. And today's event is both a celebration and commemoration. We both honour the veterans who served during the war, while also celebrating the heritage and of course the integral contribution of the Vietnamese community, not only in Victoria but also in Australia. Now, I was born and raised in St Albans, the west part of Melbourne, and I know the contribution the Vietnamese community has played in my home place of St Albans and Sunshine and areas in the west. Whether it's the business precincts in Alfreda Street, St Albans, or across the west, we know that the transition and the value of the Vietnamese community has played locally. And of course we will see, and I know that my ministerial colleague, Minister Steve, will talk about the Vietnamese Museum, the first of its kind in Australia, which will be home in Melbourne's west. Yeah, it's fantastic. And I want to pay tribute to the VMA and of course Bruce, my very good friend, Bruce Milton Hall as well. Thank you for your contribution in that fantastic next stage of the Vietnamese Museum. So there are plenty of stories, plenty of inspiration, and as part of today's event, we'll be able to see, and I know that I will be shortly presenting the award for the 50 years of the Vietnamese Australian Refugees Writing Competition. Now, this is a fantastic initiative, offering a creative way for people to express themselves and to tell their stories in their own words. It also brings together both the experience of the Vietnamese community and veterans who served in the war, to reflect, to commemorate, and of course to share their stories to the next generation. Before I can finish, I would also again like to thank the Australian Vietnamese Women's Association for again organising this event, and the many other organisations that are here today to most importantly keep Victoria's Vietnamese community connected, supported, and of course very strong. And thank you once again for the opportunity to be here for this occasion. And it's an important day of commemoration and celebration, and a time to reflect at the Vietnam Veterans Museum. Thank you very much for your service and sacrifice. And again, I'd like to thank the Vietnam Veterans Museum and all the volunteers for hosting us here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello everyone, I'm Vietnamese. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands that we're meeting on today, the Bunurong people, and pay my respects to elders past and present, and acknowledge any Aboriginal people who may be here with us today. I'd also like to acknowledge my parliamentary colleagues, both state and federal. Julian, I'll resist talking about the importance of the upper house in our democracy, but I'd also, of course, like to acknowledge the many dignitaries who are also here. In particular, can I acknowledge all of the Vietnamese community leaders who have joined us for today's important celebration and the veterans community, and I want to acknowledge the strong and enduring bonds right across not just Victoria but our country between the Vietnamese community in Australia and Vietnam veterans. It is a really important year for the Vietnamese community, and I know that there are many events organised right across the state over the coming months, which we're all enormously looking forward to being part of. But for me, it's one of the early memories that I have as a child, and I think those of us of a certain age will be in a similar boat. Those images of seeing people come to Australia from Vietnam, from war-torn Vietnam, under the most difficult circumstances, those images are certainly seared in my memory as a young girl. I myself and my family had come from another place to be in Australia, but under very easy circumstances in comparison, and I think that it's really important that on the 50th anniversary of Vietnamese refugee settlement in Australia that we never forget the history of how the Vietnamese community came here, which I think gives it even more of a powerful sense of achievement when you think about the strength, the hard work and the way in which the Vietnamese community have changed our country forever and for the better. I think that it's also really important that when we think about the vibrant multicultural community that we are here in Victoria, I can't imagine that without the contribution of the Vietnamese community. And I live close to where Natalie Suleiman lives in Melbourne's West, and I know that it just wouldn't be the place that it is, the wonderful place that it is, without the contribution of the Vietnamese community. And when we talk about multiculturalism, I know that, you know, that can conjure up different views amongst people, but for me, it really just describes the wonderful diversity of our community here in Victoria. We have 50% of our population were either born overseas or have a parent who was born overseas. So that diversity is the story of all of us. And I just want to acknowledge how wonderful it is to be someone who lives in a very vibrant multicultural community alongside many people of Vietnamese heritage. So it is an important year, and I know that there are many community organisations that make such a huge difference right across our state, but I did want to make a special acknowledgement of the Australian Vietnamese Women's Association. And Nikki, you are incredible, you lead an amazing team. And Cam and the other fierce women who founded the organisation and continue to do such amazing work. I just want to thank you and acknowledge the very thoughtful way in which you not only support the Vietnamese Victorian community, but actually the whole community, and how you work together across so many different parts of not just government services, but how you work across very different and diverse communities. So in finishing, I just want to say that the Victorian Government is incredibly proud to support not only today's event, but the many events that we will celebrate together this year. And as we reflect on the 50 years, we celebrate not only the Vietnamese community's success, but also the strength and spirit that has helped shape the diverse, inclusive Australia that we all have the honour of enjoying today. Thank you.
so much, Ashley and Minister Stead. It has been so wonderful to hear you speak about the contributions of the Vietnamese Australians. Okay, I'm going to switch up gears a little bit now, and you're going to see Nikki as stagehand, because we're actually going to go into a performance, and if someone wants to come and give me a hand, that'd be fantastic. We have a performance from the Australian Vietnamese Arts and Culture Group, actually. Oh, thank you, Brett, Tasari. And they're going to come up and do an introduction of the performance. You Mai Hương, will you come and speak?
Thank you, Vicky. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Nắng lên sóng nghèo. The sun is rising in my hometown. A piece of art, a piece of music, and a piece of dance, which praises the country town of the old southern Vietnam. The female dancers of the Australian Vietnamese arts and culture, in their traditional áo dài, traditional conical hats, will showcase the peaceful and warm life of the villages by the rice fields. Thank you.
chân lãng du khi nào một thu. Đây bóng dừa xanh xanh tôi mến thương, chim trắng về đêm vui reo ngàn hương. Kia cổng làng hàng cao nghiêng nắng xuống, đàn em bé đùa hát ca quên sầu hương. Đó ấm về tình ta thêm thắm tươi, bông lúa vàng nhớ tay anh cày rơi. Để nắng đẹp miền quê tôi sáng trôi, bừng lên sáng nghèo ấm thêm vào cuộc đời. Nắng sớm lên rồi, tươi sáng chân trời, tràn niềm vui mới. Sống nghèo ơi.
Well done. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was beautiful. I don't often get very emotional, but watching that brought back some wonderful memories. I mentioned before that I spent nearly a month at a new village called Ap Suine in South Vietnam, and they had a tiny little fort that we lived in, and the soldiers had their families live with them. And they were living in an area of around about 5 metres by 5 metres, each family, in the wall of this fort. And they lived in appalling conditions, the family. They were constantly under threat. But come market day, I just couldn't believe it. All of a sudden, the wives, the women would come out and they would be immaculate. They'd be dressed in their national dress with the pride of the Vietnamese, and off they would go. It just was just incredible to see it, and that brought it back so much. Thank you very much for it. Very quickly before we move on, I've talked about our volunteers, but I forgot to mention one of our real volunteers, Jack. Unfortunately, after a number of years here, Jack died, and he's actually buried in the area. And just to explain a little bit more about Jack, and some of the vets know this, to form a sub-branch so that we could, the Vietnam Veterans Association, so we could build the building, we had to have 12 members. We only had 11. So my dog Jack, I paid his subs for about 7 years. And Jack physically stayed here. This is true. I only tell this when the state executive and national executive aren't here to hear. But it's quite true. And he was here every single day that we were here building the place. And when he did die, if you drive out, you'll see a little graveside there, and that's Jack. So that was the one volunteer I forgot to mention. On to something much more important now. We have with us Professor Ten Ken, I hope I've pronounced it correctly at the moment, is a distinguished Vietnamese Australian politician and theoretical physicist. Then you've had a remarkable refugee journey to become a respected member of the Victorian Legislation Council and having an ongoing contribution to higher education. Thank you for being here and for coming up and sharing your story. If you would please come with your wife. It's an absolute honour to ask you to come up here and share your story. Thank you.
The lady stands behind me. Is my wife of 45 years. We left Vietnam on a boat together when we were in our teen, and she has been with me to thick and thin. And she has just resigned from IBM as a technical manager, and that has created a little bit of a problem for me. My daily activity has been scrutinized ever since. The organizing committees from the Vietnam War Museum, and also particularly from the Australian Vietnamese Women Association, and all the dignitaries, distinguished guests, and particularly on the Vietnam vets and on the ex-servicemen of the ADF. And to all of you, first and foremost, I extend my deepest gratitude to Australia and Australian people. Because of your generosity and compassion, we, once Vietnamese refugees, were given not just safety, but also a new home, a fresh start, and the opportunity to rebuild our lives. We will forever be indebted to this great nation, which not only offers us a lifeline, but also the sanctuary of freedom. This year marked 50 years since the first Vietnamese refugees were resettled in Australia. We arrived here from the most desperate of circumstances, fleeing on foot and by boat, risking death in pursuit of freedom. Freedom of freedom, we paid with tears. Freedom of freedom, we paid with our bodies. I collapsed on the fragile boat, assaulted by wind and rain. Like a person finding his way back to the bottom of the grave. I left because I wanted to be human again. These words capture the painful yet courageous journey of so many Vietnamese who sought refuge in Australia. I would like to extend my heartfelt appreciation to the AVWA and the Vietnam War Museum Committees for organizing this 50th anniversary, both celebrating and commemorating. It is an honor to stand before you here today. 50 years have passed since the fall of Saigon in 1975. It is fitting that we gather here at the museum to remember, to honor, and to express our deepest gratitude to the men and women of the Australian Defence Force who fought alongside South Vietnam to defend its people and their freedom. We owe an eternal debt to them and to the 251 Australian soldiers who made the ultimate sacrifice in the Vietnam War. We will remember them forever and always. My own story is just one of the many. Both of my parents joined the armed forces in the South Vietnam at a very young age, having fled the communist North when Vietnam was divided in 1954. They met while serving in a paratrooper division. Though women at the time were not conscripted, my mother voluntarily enlisted, and she was among the first few women to qualify for combat parachuting, and then served in the armed forces for 16 years of the 20-year war. My wife and I arrived in Brisbane in July 1980, some 45 years ago, in the dead winter, as refugees from Malaysia camp on humanitarian visa. Our journey was fraught with failed attempts, tragic losses, and the devastating separation from our families. Our boat journey took 5 harrowing days and nights before we reached Terengganu, a province of Malaysia. Twice, we were attacked by pirates in the Gulf of Thailand. We were among the lucky ones. Hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese boat people were not as fortunate. They perished at sea. Unlike many of the refugees who languished in the camps for years, our stay in the camp was brief. We pledged in our UNHCR voice to accept resettlement in any country willing to take us. That country was Australia. In Australia, I began with shift work at James Hardie, handling asbestos, but I never gave up the dream of education. With determination, I pursued my study, earning my Bachelor of Science, honors with first class honors, and University Gold Medal from the University of Queensland. The reason that for me science was more than an academic pursuit, it was my sanctuary. In the aftermath of the war after 1975, when I was a teenager, life seemed to unravel with relentless cruelty, and maths and science provided clarity and order. While others turned to faith, I turned to science. It was my refuge. Brisbane then became my launch pad for my careers. A scholarship to do a PhD in Edinburgh University, a fellowship at Oxford University, and then Melbourne University, CSIRO, and now at Swinburne University. I also, from quantum computing, my research, I also expanded my work into AI, artificial intelligence, and then I served as a member of the Victorian Parliament of the Legislative Council. In 1991, when I returned to Australia from Oxford, I could have stayed there, but I owe this country so much. At that time, I noticed in Melbourne and Victoria that while there were Vietnamese language radio programs and printed publications, there was no Vietnamese television program. So in response, I, together with some friends, founded VNTV, Vietnamese television program, a twice-weekly program broadcast on the free-to-air community channel. It was run entirely by volunteers and lasted for 20 years. People often ask me why I entered politics. The answer lies in my childhood. Growing up amid war, witnessing its devastation firsthand, even at a young age, I saw how politics determined life and death. That awareness shaped me. When the opportunity arose to run for public offices, I saw it as a chance to give back to the country that had given me so much. My experiences as a refugee and a scientist convinced me that I could serve in a meaningful way. Serving in Parliament was an immense privilege, and I did not take it lightly. I dedicated myself fully to the role, striving to repay, at whatever small way I could, the generosity that Australia has shown us. But no matter how much I gave back, I can never fully repay that debt. Yet my story is among many of the Vietnamese arriving here. The Vietnamese refugee resettlement program has been a resounding success. Today, across 3 and 4 generations, Vietnamese Australians are firmly rooted in this country. We contribute socially, economically, and culturally, enriching the fabric of Australia's multicultural society. Together, we have strengthened the harmony and vibrancy of this nation. Together, we continue to advance Australia fair. For those who have come across the sea, we have boundless plans to share. With courage, let us all continue to advance. Thank you very much.
Cảm ơn anh Dũng, cảm ơn chị Lim. Thank you so much. Russell Jackson is a Vietnam veteran and dedicated volunteer here at the National Vietnam Veterans Museum. We are very pleased to welcome you here today to share your story, Russell. Can we get a show of hands? How many National Vietnam volunteers do we have here? Actually, yes. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for all the work that you do. I'm so grateful for all the volunteers at AVWA too. G'day, Russell.
Well, I feel very humble after all those speeches. I'm here to talk about how I got to Vietnam. So I was working away, I was a fourth year apprentice, and my dad rang me up and he said, "You won the raffle." And that was, we had to put our names in the barrel, and who was drawn out was got 2 years in the army. Now, you've got to remember it was different times. So my dad said, "Yeah, Dad, it's your turn." So that's what it was my turn. And I did my 2 years and enjoyed most of it. Did recruit training and corps training, then went to Vietnam. And I remember we'd been to Kapuka for training and come back, and the sergeant said, "Oh, you've got to go on leave." And I said, "Oh, on leave?" He said, "Yeah, you've got to go on leave. So you have 10 days before you go to Vietnam." And I said, "Am I going to Vietnam?" He said, "Oh no, you won't go before Christmas." So I said, "Okay." So I had 10 days leave, come back, and he said, "Don't unpack your bags, you're going tomorrow." And that was the army. It just, it was, and it was an experience. It was just different things to learn. Enjoyed everything over there. Of course, war's awful. No one wants the war, but we were there to do a job, and we did a job. And I worked at the hospital over there, did bridges, did a bridging course with the Americans up in Saigon. So you do lots of different things in the army, and I enjoyed most of them. And there's things you don't like, but you have to put up with it. And then came home and had nothing to do with the army for 25 years. I just switched off and said, no, people give you a hard time, so I didn't do anything for 25 years. And my daughter said to me one day, "Daddy, have you been to Vietnam?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "You went overseas?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Fill this form out." I said, "What's that like?" If my daughter could save $5, so she got cheap train fares into the city. And so 2 weeks later, she shows me this form and she said, there's a ticket there. And I said, "Oh, that's good." And she said, "Oh, by the way," she's walking away, she said, "By the way, Dad, they're looking for you." I said, "Oh, they're not looking too hard. I've moved once in 25 years. So, they caught up with me eventually. And life just goes on. You just got to get back into life, and you have a family and that. And one of my greatest things, and it took me a long time to get in those front doors, that's working here. And it's a very important thing, so Peter said before, you meet people here, and just the different reasons they have for coming here. And I won't go into any of them actually, but it's an honour. I think it's an honour to work here. And I've got to thank John, because he started all. And they've been very good to me, and all the other volunteers here have been fantastic. And, well, that's my journey. So thank you very much.